Hey everybody, it's Tammy from Housewares. Today I want to play with my watercolor Strathmore Visual Journal, which I love this size because you can see it's kind of smallish. And what happens is when I work on a page in this journal, I don't feel overwhelmed. Like I don't feel like I have this huge space that I need to figure what I want to do. So this is great for quick little projects and just, I don't know, it just takes away the feeling of being overwhelmed. So I'm going to just open it up to a blank page. I have a few left in this journal. And today I'm going to be working with some watercolors and stencils. And some of you might think that watercolors and stencils don't mix, but they actually do. So I'm going to show you a fun technique that I really like, and it just really expands the use of your stencils. There's so many things you can do with stencils, and I will put the links for these stencils in the description below. They are from my shop from Housewares, where I sell mainly stencils, but I also sell some hand-carved stamps as well. I'm also going to be working with these Inktense pencils. And I love Inktense watercolors because they are permanent when they're dry, so you can layer over them. And I don't know how many I have here, but this is a really nice set. I just got off of Amazon. And I might also be working with some of my mini word stencils, which I don't have a whole lot in the shop, but the ones I do have I love. So this one's Joy, this one's Mary. I think I might turn this into a card front, so we'll see. So one of the first things that you need to do is, and I'm kind of playing and practicing, so if it doesn't turn out, I'll do one that does turn out. So I'm just going to wet my watercolor paper, and I don't want to leave a puddle there, so I just want to get it wet, and I'm going to kind of dab it off with my paper towel here. And then what I do want to do, which I often do with my art journals and stuff, is I want to put a piece of deli paper down, just so I don't go over on the other side of this paper. And it's okay if I do, but if there is something on the other side that I really want to preserve or scan as a digital copy, then that way I won't ruin it. So what I'm going to do here is, now I should have some clamps to clamp this down because it is kind of popping up since it's wet, but I'm going to just hold it down. And there I'm going to just lay my stencil on top, and I want to do a little bit of a background. So I'm going to wet this again. Now this time I'm going to get it pretty good and wet, and I'm leaving the water there. Now I'm going to practice with two different techniques. And one of them I have done before, and one of them I haven't. So you guys are going to be my guinea pigs. First of all, I'm going to work with these water brushes. And these are just absolutely wonderful. This blue one is from Pentel. And you can see that it has a really fine point. I love this one. I do calligraphy with this one. And these are really good quality brushes. Got them off of Amazon again. I'll put the link in the description box. And then these I got from Amazon as well, and they are a collection of 6. And what I find is that these aren't as high of quality. I bought these because these had wider brushes. And you can see how wide the brush is, but there's a little bit of a spur here from some bristles that got bent. I don't really like that, but I'll make use. And same thing here. I'll make use of it somehow. And you have to be really careful when you put the cap back on not to catch the bristles. And then this also came with some other ones. Again, you can see one. Now I can cut that off. That's not a problem. And then we have some other really fine ones here. I have not worked with these yet, so we'll see how they do work. As a matter of fact, we'll pick one of these and see how it works. So what I'd like to do is get this brush really wet. Now, you fill this chamber with water, and then there's a little thing that says push. These do unscrew, and that's how you get the water in there. And then when you push that, it will get the bristles good and wet. So I can see there's water coming out there. So I want to make sure this is still pretty wet. And the technique I'm going to use right now is and this is the one that I've done. I think I'm going to be doing a red and green theme for Christmas, since it's near Christmas time. So all I'm doing is I'm gathering up some pigment on my brush, and I want to get it good and pigmented. Now, if you flick it, you'll get little spatters, which actually is a nice technique, but it's not quite what I want to do right now. So you can see I'm just touching this here, and this is starting to spread. Now, the more water I have, the more it's going to spread, obviously. So I want to have a little bit more water on here because I want to be able to just touch my brush to the puddle and then have it spread on its own, which is just the delight of capillary action. So I'm going to do kind of every other one, and you can see there it's spreading a little bit better. I'm going to squeeze a little bit more water out of my brush. So I'm just going to keep going here without refilling the brush because I do want the gradations that you get from a nice watercolor look. That's kind of one of the many reasons why you would choose watercolor over perhaps an acrylic or an oil. So just going to do this now. This is very, very puddly, so you'll see what I'm going to have to do a little bit later. And let's just put that there. So you can see the water is pretty much staying within those circles, which is what I want. Although if it does bleed, I'm really okay with that. I'm really going to embrace the imperfections today. So I'm just kind of doing there. I want that to be just a little bit darker. And you can see that's lighter. Kind of don't mind that. But I'll make it a little darker. So I do want some to be lighter and darker, like I said before. So now what I'm going to do, because I'm loving that color, but I'm going to switch to a different shade of red. And I'm going to, again, just pick it up. I'm not worried about having pigment from the other pencil on here, because I'm just living on the edge that way, you know? So here I'm just going to, again, just kind of touch this, and now my water is absorbing into the paper, so my puddles are getting a little smaller, but that's okay. I'll just squeeze a little more water out of my water brush here. And the nice thing about this water brush, there are two really nice things. First one is, I mean, I don't have to keep going back into my water jar to get more water. It's right here. And the second thing is, these are absolutely perfect for traveling. I've done this in the car. I mean, imagine doing watercolor in the car while I'm traveling. Of course, I'm not driving. My husband is. And I actually watercolor in church. And so, you know, I can sit there in we don't have pews, we have seats. And I can sit in my seat and I can do my watercolors during the sermon, so I can do my Bible art journaling. It's absolutely perfect. And with these pencils, it's not messy. I love it. And nobody has come up to me and told me I can't do that in the sanctuary yet. So until they do, I am on this. So again, just kind of going in some of the circles. You don't have to do all of them. You can leave some white space. Of course, there is going to be white space underneath where I didn't do these circles here. But, you know, don't be afraid to just let go, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean my brush off, which I don't have to do, but all I'm doing is wiping it on a paper towel. And then I'm going to go back. I happen to have 3 shades of red in here. And, well, this is more of an orange, so 2 shades of red and an orange, just kind of a red. And then I'm going to just dab it on here. Now you can go back in and you can, I'm putting the orange on some of the reds, kind of doing it in the center a little bit, again, to give it a little bit of gradation and get that lovely watercolory look. And you can see maybe on this pencil that it's a little bit lopsided. It's because I'm rubbing my brush on here and I'm pulling the pigment off. So eventually I'm going to have to sharpen this. But right now, I mean, I've used this a lot already and I still haven't had to sharpen it. So it's just a lot of pigment in these Inktense pencils. And I just love it. So what I'm going to do here now, I think I'm done with this layer. So I'm going to actually attempt to stay organized, and I'm going to wash my brush on a paper towel. I'm going to squeeze out some water and just wash it on the paper towel. And then I'm going to, I could do a couple things here. I could take a paper towel and blot it, debating, or I could just lift it up. Now, if I lift it up and there's still water there, it may spread. So I think I'm going to live on the edge, and I think I'm going to lift it up, and we're going to see what happens. You heard it here first, peeps. So I would just lift it straight up, see what happens here. Okay, so it's a little blobby. I'm okay with that because I'm going to do some layering. So what I think I want to do now is I could pat this with the paper towel, but I'm going to pop the bubbles here. And I think what I'd really like to do is just dry this with a heat gun. So I'm going to pause the video, dry it with a heat gun, and come back with the next layer. Okay, so I'll show you what happened after I dried it in just a moment. I'm going to keep you in suspense. So this is another page that I'm doing because I decided I wanted to show you the difference, okay? So hold on just a second, you'll get to see the other one in a minute. So what I did here was, instead of wetting my paper, I laid my stencil down first. Now, what happens is, when you wet this, your stencil is, if you make enough puddles, your stencil is going to kind of fuse to your paper in spots. So what I want to do here is go directly from the pencil to the paper. We're going to see how this works, and that's kind of neat. And I'm probably going to go back and go over that with a brush. But this way, it's just a different way of laying your pigment down on your paper. So you're not going in with your pencil, your water brush marker, and you just want to make sure your paper is really good and wet. So we'll do this here. And this, in some ways, is easier. You have a little less control here than you do with putting the pigment directly on the water brush. So I think you do, but I don't know, maybe you find differently. It's the beauty of working with these things together. Okay, so there, I'm just going to spread this out a little bit. Now there's a lot of water here, but you see you're going to have a different look because the pencil marks are kind of staying on the paper, which is fine. Don't have a problem with that at all. I'm just using the red here. And so I'm just going to quickly go through this. And then I'm going to go in with the little more brownish color. And don't forget you can mix techniques. So I'm going to go back in with the third layer, putting the pigment directly on my brush like I did the first time. So here I'm just going to go back in the spots that I just did. And then I'm going to go in with my orangish color, and I'm just going to go in some of the ones that I already did, leave some of them blank, put one there. So now I'm kind of starting to lose a little track of where I put them, but that's okay. This is not rocket science, peeps. It just isn't. Okay. So I'm kind of liking how that looks. It kind of looks like Christmas balls. I might want to do what I said I was going to do and go in. And you can see I'm picking up a lot of pigment here. And then I do want this to seep underneath a little bit. And you may see why in just a moment. So I'm going to get a paper towel, and I think I actually have my roll of paper towels in my bathroom because I think I was actually cleaning. Imagine that. So this is just an old paper towel. I'm just going to go over this and spread the paper towel out a little bit and pull up that water. And we're going to see how this looks. And again, this is so fun because you just never know how it's going to look. So we're going to pull this up. And that's really kind of fun. I'm kind of liking that. And then here is the one that I did earlier. And you can see totally different look. Same supplies, different ways of putting them down. So loving this too. And this is just looks like Christmas balls. This is really fun. So I'm going to pause again. I'm going to dry. And then I'm going to put a next layer on both of these. And we're going to see how it looks. So stay tuned. Okay, so here's what this layer looks like. I'll try and pull it up to the camera a little bit. So that kind of looks like ornaments, and then this is kind of just a real watercolory, flowy thing going on. So I'm going to take my Christmas tree or my tree tag stencil, and I'm going to put a few trees along here. Now, if I want this to be kind of like a landscape, I'm going to make my trees that are the closest, are they going to be darker or lighter? Anyone? Can anyone tell me? Bueller? Anyone? The ones in the front are going to be darker, and the ones behind are going to be lighter, if you want it to be a realistic look. So I'm going to take one of my water brushes, and I'm going to play with this. Now, again, these aren't the highest quality, so I'm not sure how this is going to turn out, but let's give it a try. So I'm going to take my greens. I have some olive greens and some darker forest green. So I'm going to use, this is more like a lime. I'm going to use this in the background. So I'm going to pick this up, and I'm going to make sure I have a lot of water in here. So, not sure. There we go. I have enough water. Okay. So, I'm going to try. I might have to use a more detailed brush, but I'm going to try and go in here. Okay. That's looking kind of good. Now, this is kind of light, so I'm not sure this is going to show up in the background very well. So, I'm going to darken it up just a little bit. And I'm going to pretend like my light source is coming from the opposite end. My light source is going to come from this way. So if your light source is coming from up and to the right, your shading is going to be down and to the left. That's the easiest way for me to remember how to shade. So let's do a little bit darker, color in here. And again, this is not exact. And I might just decide to shade with my Pitt pen. So we'll see. Again, this is kind of experimenting. So I'm going to hold this and lift it up. And it's really kind of blobby. But it's okay, because we can always outline it with a pen. There's always ways to change something up to make it look the way you want. If nothing else, you gesso over it with white gesso and move on. So if I don't like this, I can just do white gesso and start all over. So there you can see there's a little bit darker. I like the way that's looking. And I'm going to go with my medium tone here. Make it a little lighter, hopefully. And then if it's a little too dark, I can pick up some of that with my water brush and just the water. And it's going to lighten it up a little bit more. Now that's very light. So let's see. Let's kind of pick this up. Yeah, kind of liking it. Okay. So I'm going to dry this stencil off on the bottom, and I'm going to move it over. And then I'm going to use some different trees here. So let me see if I have another green. I do. This is more, this is more my olive green. And again, I'm going to get my brush kind of wet. And the drier your brush is, the more pigment you're going to pick up. So that's a way to kind of make your items a little bit darker. So yeah, that one worked out really well, because my brush wasn't as wet. So keep in mind you can dry your brush on your paper towel. And then let's do this guy. He's a little darker because he's in the front. And then this guy's a little darker. And we'll do one more. We'll make this one a little bit lighter. Pick up that pigment and go back here. Now, I'm showing you the absolute joys of Inktense pencil. As I'm doing this and I'm laying down this color, this green on top of the red is not moving. That's because they're Inktense pencils. I laid down the watercolor, I dried it, it's permanent when it dries. So this red is not going to move when I lay the green down. I love Inktense for that reason. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry this, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to do some pen work, and then I'll probably shade it. So hold on just a second. Okay, so this is dry, and I want to give my tree some definition. So I have dried the stencil. Now you can see that I don't really clean my stencils. I do clean them if I have stuff on them that's going to smear or discolor my next project. So if I have watercolors on here, now the Inktense shouldn't, smear the next project, but I'm just a little leery, so I did kind of wipe it off. I didn't wash it, but I wiped it off. So I'm going to take the stencil and I'm going to line it back up. Now you can freehand this. It'd be really kind of whimsical if you just went in and you did this and just freehanded it, okay? This one's a little blobby. I might need the stencil for that just to give me a guide. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of follow a basic line. I'm not going to be real particular about it because I want it to look a little sketchy. And if you think that you can't do this whimsically, use your non-dominant hand. You will definitely become whimsical unless you're ambidextrous. I mean, you can see how much more shaky I am with my non-dominant hand. And you'll see a different look as I lift this up. So I love that technique for my art journals. So see how squiggly it is? I actually love that. Love it. Okay. So I'm going to take this and put it back. And then I'm going to continue using my non-dominant hand. For my daughters, that would be their right hand because they're both lefties. Go figure. And then there we go. So look how fun that is. Now I forget which ones I used. I think it was, yep, it was set up that way. And so again, that's a kind of a blobby tree. Now, I don't want to go through that other tree, so I want to make sure it's kind of in the background. And again, really sketchy and whimsical and fun. Our art journals should really be all about our self-expression, whether that's writing down some deep thoughts and actually using our art journals as therapists, which is just amazing, or whether it's just to have fun, be free, not worry about making mistakes. Holy cow, it's just watercolor and paper, So let's do this last one here, and then I'm going to use my Christmas words to kind of write something. And so you think, what do you use this for? Well, you can just leave it as is. You can open this up, date it, show it to yourself later on, see how far you've come, see, just the fun stuff that you did in 2016. You can come back and rework it, okay? You can cut it up and use it as a front for a card, which I'm likely to do. You can frame it. You can put it in your house. I am a big, big, big proponent of framing my artwork and hanging it in my house. even if it's not perfect, even if I see mistakes. Holy cow, why would you have it sit on a shelf for people not to see? I am all about having artwork in my home, and my goal is to fill my home with my artwork. And my husband also is an artist, and his stuff is great. And so the goal is to have it filled with his stuff too. So now I have this Joy stencil, and I have to decide where I'm going to put it because I want to perhaps cut this up and make it a card front. So I have to decide where it's going to be if that is what I'm going to do. And I think I'm going to take some, I need to get my ink, so hold on here. I'm going to ink this, and of course I can't find my ink, so I will be right back. Okay, I'm going to use this Ranger Archival ink, and the one thing I did not tell you when I did my pen work is that if you're using, I'm using a micron pen, if you're using a micron pen, you must make sure that your paper and your media are all dry, because if you don't, you will ruin that little puppy, and those pens are just so wonderful, you don't want to ruin it. So I'm going to take a makeup sponge, and I'm not sure how wet this pad is, but I'm going to give it a try. I think this is good. Now, I always tell my students when I do classes, I tell them to pay more attention to the hand that is holding the stencil than the hand that is doing the pouncing. And the reason being is that you just don't want your stencil to shift. And if it shifts and you don't know it, then it's kind of a bummer. But then you just create a new technique. So I'm just going in here, and I'm making sure as I get this finger, like moving this finger around, I don't want to smudge the bottom here. But again, if I do, it's just not a huge deal. So I'm just pouncing up and down, and you just want to make sure that you get into all the nooks and crannies. You can always put the stencil back and re-stencil, but this way it's just a little bit easier if I do it all at once. And I think I'm going to be liking this. So I'm going to hold this down, not move anything, and lift it up. And I think I want a little more pigment up here. And there you have your word. And I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to outline it. So again, what I'm going to do is give it a little zap with my heat gun. I think I'm okay, but I want to make sure. So let's go over that, excuse me, with my micron pen. I think I'm on 05. Now again, I can freehand this, and maybe I will. I think in keeping with the whimsy. So I just want to go over the black spots. And that's going to give the word just a little bit more definition. And then, of course, I believe I need some little red dots somewhere, so I'll probably go over this with some enamel accents in red. But let's find the Pitt pen, and I'm going to do the outlining, or the shading, I'm sorry, with a Pitt pen, if I can find it. So hold on just a second. Okay, so again, if the light's coming from up and to the right, it's going to be down and to the left. So let's just do a little bit down and to the left, a little bit of shading. Remember, if you think that your artwork is flat, doesn't have any pizzazz or oomph, chances are you're not using at least 2 colors for effect, for shading effect. When you think, nothing is one color ever. Nothing is ever one color. Even if you have a piece of opaque plastic, like a plastic lid to your, Tupperware, and it's red, even the way the light hits it, it's going to be different colors. So if you have one color, it's not going to have as much depth as it should in real life. So I think that's it. Oh, one more thing. I think this needs just a little bit more punch. And I'm going to use this hand-carved stamp, just little oval thingies. And I don't want this to be perfect, just going in with archival ink. And I'm just kind of giving it a little bit more whimsy. And if you put, like, if you stamp down and it's too dark, stamp off a little bit first and then come back and give it just a little bit of oomph. So there we go. That gives it motion, gives it a little bit more excitement. And I think that's it. So that is my art journal page using watercolor and stencils and a few other things. And I hope you really enjoyed this. Please feel free to subscribe. And please visit my Etsy shop and you'll see all kinds of stencils there. I think I have over 200 designs. And you can see the quality that they are. So feel free to visit, and I'd love to see your creations. So tag me. I'm on Instagram at Housewares, HOWSEWEARS, and the link will be down below. So I'd love to see what you're making. Thanks so much for visiting. Bye-bye.